Music. It's the love of music that brings us together. The love of music that forms the bond between us. For the next hour, join us for the love of music, presenting those aspects of music which excite, provoke, and inspire. Our host today is David Dubal, WNCN music director, pianist, educator, and writer on music. Here is David Dubal for the love of music.
This is David Dubal, and it's my pleasure today to have as my guest the English-born pianist who now lives in Canada, Peter Katin, who was playing in, well, he's playing all over the world all the time, but he has not played in America as much as he has played in other places, and just recently played at Alice Tully Hall, and he is making a fine career in the United States. He's been known here since the 50s through his records, and I'm delighted to have you here, Mr. Katin.
Thank you.
Now, it's a very interesting thing. Although you don't have a great American career and your name has been known through the records, isn't this an enormously new thing in the history of the world that a man born across an ocean could, well, I've known your name since I was a child. Now, that's quite amazing. Only through the power of the LP has this happened. You ever thought of it like that?
Extraordinary. I have, very often.
And it's wonderful. The idea that thousands of people can hear your recordings, just as they will on this program, and you've never been here, let's say.
Well, I have, but
I know. Now, your records are usually in the romantic repertoire. Is that where you feel most settled? The Rachmaninoff, Chopin, and Liszt?
not entirely, because when I started, I was playing Beethoven, Mozart. I was doing a lot of chamber music and things like that, and it was really a performance of the Rachmaninoff Third Concerto that branded me as a virtuoso. I don't know why, but it did. Well, it was a great success, and after that they wouldn't let me go. You know,
it's wonderful.
I was typecast. Well, it was wonderful up to a point, but
you became typecast as a Rachmaninoff, a romantic player.
Yes, but after a number of years, you know, one gets tired of being typecast as anything, you know.
One can't win, of course. I mean, here you were learning the hardest concerto, probably technically, in the world, and eventually, in a way, it turned against you.
Determined to make a good job of it, you see. That's what happens.
Now, is it true that the Rock Third is the hardest concerto at least digitally in the literature?
It's probably got more notes to the square inch than any other concerto, but I've played more difficult ones. I mean, I've always found, for instance, Prokofiev very difficult.
Which one?
Far more.
Number 2?
Well, the only one I've ever played is number 3, but
and that's more difficult than the Rock 3 for you?
For me.
How interesting.
I don't know, because it's a long time since I played it. I would love to do it again. I mean, I love the music, but I'd have to relearn it, of course, and I don't know quite how it would come back to me. It may be completely different.
Well, there's a part of you that resists playing that music, too, at this time. If you're typecast, you may want to go on to play Mozart sonatas, and they won't let you, record companies, perhaps. Is that possible?
Well, I'm rather persistent, you know. In recent years, for instance, I've started to learn late Beethoven sonatas, which I've never played before. You see, I've never had the time, because although playing these virtuoso works may be one thing, but, you know, it's far more difficult than people think to actually keep it up when you're not what I call a born virtuoso, when these things don't come so easily. You may make a success doing it, and obviously one wants to, but the time consumed in preparing a work like the Rachmaninoff Third just for one performance is so enormous that everything else goes out of the window. And it was only, in fact, last year that I played the Beethoven Opus 111 Sonata for the first time, and I've been wanting to play that thing for about 20 years, I should think.
So you played it on stage for the first time, is that what you're saying?
For the first time, yes.
Now, how did it go?
I think it went very well, because by that time I knew, at least I'd lived with it mentally, and it was a question really of learning it and getting my ideas onto the keyboard.
There's often such an enormous gap between studio, let's say, and actual concert hall. And that first performance sometimes can be a shocking experience, am I right? When you've never had the experience of playing it before.
It can. You've got to start somewhere.
Yeah. That's right.
Yes,
you have to.
It's much better if you could start in a small place. Not the place where people are breathing down your neck, because...
so now how do you follow up with it, Peter? Do you try to program that in as many recitals as possible for the next several years? Is that it?
Yes, I think if I always think if you learn something like that, if you learn any great work, part of learning it is to perform it at least a half a dozen times.
Yes. Yeah.
You really must. But that's part of the complete picture is there.
Very interesting.
And you can take it up again months later, and it's still there. The ideas may change. Right? The basic ideas probably won't. Details may change. Now, I haven't played the Opus 111 for a few months, but I'm playing it on my next tour, and I think I'm shortly going to practice it again. But I think some details of interpretation have been going around in my brain.
Programming itself is very difficult. Where do you place a work that ends the way 111 ends?
I'd love to put it at the end of a recital, but you see, there are things against that. I mean,
then you can't really play encores.
You can't
effectively.
play. No, you can't play anything after it. This is one of the problems of a work like that. It really drains you completely. And yet, if you come to it at the end of a recital, you're already probably a little bit tired.
Yeah.
And I put it at the end of the first half.
111 is the ultimate, the last of the Beethoven sonatas, and someone once said that there are pianists that can play the first movement, and there are some that can play the second movement, but nobody can play both movements. How do you feel about that?
I think what you have to do with any work that you're studying is to see it through from beginning to end. You can't take each movement as an entity in itself. I think people go very wrong. It's rather like the anxious student trying to get the most difficult part of the Chopin F minor ballad right.
Yes.
They'll go straight to the coda because it's technically the most difficult part.
Right.
Well, what they won't get, of course, is the dramatic pause between that and the rest of the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't practice that because you see a couple of bars rest. They don't practice a couple of bars rest.
I understand that.
So they don't understand how to time it, how to make the drama. It's that kind of thing. I think you have to think through from beginning to end of anything you learn.
Yeah, and I think that usually is what many inexperienced people do. They are after the difficulty, and they do that very well, but the whole picture is often blurred. When you learn a work being a product of the LP era, when you learn a work, you have at your disposal Katin's performance of 111, Schnabel's. Everybody has recorded. All of the big pianists that love Beethoven.
Everyone's recorded everything.
Around, yeah. Do you go and listen to these performances? Do you say, "Oh my goodness, there's no way that I can plumb the depths of 111's finale like Schnabel did"? Or do you get intimidated by hearing it, or do you just stay away?
No, I stay away. I think once one has a very definite idea of how one's going to interpret a work, then I don't think, if it's really there, no other performance is going to influence it, although listening to other performances of it makes you aware that interpretation is rather like a point of view. There are many points of view.
Yeah.
So there are many interpretations. And
interpretation is such an interesting word in itself. To one person it means something, a point of view. To another it really means that it's translating to one form from a foreign form. And in a way that's true because to the public, notes have no meaning. So
you're taking it from the printed page and bringing it to life.
Right.
So I prefer to call it recreation.
Recreation is...
This is really what one's doing. I remember Clifford Curzon saying this to me years ago. One is really recreating.
Yeah. That's really what it's about.
And making it one's own, and one can live with it that way.
You are obviously a secure man, Peter Katin, because you answered that you're not interested in others, playing.
Oh, I didn't say I'm not interested. I am. I'm very
But it's not going to
interested.
influence you, I mean.
It's not going to influence me. What's going to fascinate me, of course, is somebody like Claudio Arrau, or somebody who has lived with Beethoven for far longer than I have, and has played, for instance, all the sonatas, which I haven't. There's a great deal of thinking behind that. Now, that doesn't mean that I agree with what they do, or I would like to imitate what they do, but it does show
just didn't
me
come about.
a little more philosophy behind the notes.
So, in many ways, the long-playing record has been a wonderful thing to the development of a wide connoisseurship, but it also, in many ways, has influenced a lot of people to imitate, I think.
I think in that
Especially
particular
conductors,
respect,
in my opinion.
Yes, it's been a disaster.
Yeah.
I
use
think
that
to the
word,
student
that's a strong
now, because
word. To the student, yeah.
Immediately, they never talk about performances anymore. They talk about recordings.
Oh, yes.
And what's worse is, this is one of my hobby horses, they talk about the speed. So-and-so takes 27 seconds over the last movement of the Chopin B-flat minor sonata. So-and-so takes 25 seconds, etc., etc. I'm just wondering whether they're listening to the music and what that last movement actually means.
Yeah.
And does it matter? Because I think the mood, the conception that you have of the music will dictate the tempo. You don't decide on the tempo, at least you shouldn't.
Right.
You shouldn't say this is going to be too slow, this is going to be too fast. It may be too slow or too fast for what you have in mind, but I wouldn't like to put a metronome to anything I do, because I may do it the same every time, but I don't really know if I'm doing something slower or faster. That's where I don't really care. The thing is, I'm doing it as I want to do it, and if it turns out to be slower or faster than somebody else's, that's what I don't really care about.
Right, right. I have actually heard students tell me that, well, they are going to play the Chopin Nocturne in D-flat, for instance, the work that we are going to begin the musical part of our program with very shortly. They have heard so-and-so's performance, and it's, let's say, 6 minutes and 18 seconds. And they actually work to get theirs at 6 minutes and 18 seconds.
I think the reason is, you see, that they're convinced by that performance. Probably the person who took that time over it, as I've said, was convinced that was the way he had to do it.
Yes.
And the trouble is, it sounds so convincing that somebody, usually somebody without the experience, will say, then I have got to do it that way because that's going to be effective for me as well.
Right, right. That's wonderful.
That's where they make the big mistake.
Now, I know that yours is 5:30. 5 minutes and 30 seconds, your Nocturne in D-flat, and I love it so much that I, too, have attempted to make my performance 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
How awful of you. Did you manage?
Not at all. Not at all. That alone could be a lifetime work, getting it actually the timing of one's favorite performance. Peter, if you don't mind, we're actually going to hear your performance, which takes 5 minutes and 30 seconds, of the celebrated, beautiful D-flat Nocturne. The artist, my guest today, Peter Katin. Oh, you have heard a gorgeous performance of the D-flat Nocturne, Opus 27, by Frédéric Chopin, almost, as Peter Katin said, the inventor of the piano. And we'll be right back with more discussion with my guest, Peter Katin, who played that nocturne for us right after these messages. This is David Dubal, my guest today, the British-born pianist, Peter Katin. And we just heard a Chopin nocturne. We're going to hear a Chopin waltz. I want to ask you this, Peter. While I was listening to your performance of the D-flat nocturne, I was thinking, how could Chopin have gotten up this morning in my apartment, let's say he was transplanted to New York, where they're ripping buildings around me, and went to the piano inspired to produce this exquisite D-flat nocturne. The world is so different now, obviously, because we couldn't even have a music like this, could we? How do you work with noise and feelings like this?
Oh, I hate noise.
Mm-hmm.
I loathe it. It depends on the noise. I mean, the excitement of a chattering audience or something like that. I mean, chattering beforehand.
That's different
And
noise.
things like that. But I don't like mechanical noises.
These uncontrolled noises. How could Chopin have thought of the D-flat nocturne under such circumstances? Hammer jacks and screeching and sanitation workers screaming while they put out their put the garbage up and so forth.
I wonder whether it was all that different, because I mean, you have to remember the horse-drawn carriages and the steel, or whatever they were, rims.
I want to be fair here.
And the cobblestones and all the rest of it must have made an awful racket.
And yet
Really.
the idiom of this ultra-romantic music, it must have had some aspect of time and place to have created such romanticism.
Well, there's one thing he always said, and that was he had to have the right conditions in which to work.
Yeah.
And this was very important.
Chopin was fanatical on that.
Oh, yes. It was after that, of course, that he started to write all his greatest works, and that was at Georges Sand's country house at Nohant. But then, you see, there was nothing to be heard. He had the back room of the house all to himself, and he was waited on hand, foot, or finger. And he was, in fact, left to write. He had the ideal conditions.
Yeah. Although he had to work hard, as he needed so much money to keep himself, as he said, in good taste, that he had to constantly teach, though, during the season.
Yes, that's when he went back to Paris, and he taught,
Yeah.
because he didn't compose. After this, his life fell into a pattern for about 6 years, and this was how it worked. In fact, he was a very great, self-disciplinarian, if you like, when it came to writing. For instance, he wrote the funeral march, the famous funeral march of the B-flat minor sonata, about 2.5 years before he wrote the rest of it, because he said he couldn't find the right conditions for finishing it. It must have been all up in his brain somewhere, you see. When he went to Georges Sand's house the first summer, he wrote the other 3 movements. And there was a terrifying vision of death, and yet he was in a very calm, happy mood at the time. It's incredible.
Again, surroundings and what happens in the psyche can be so different. But he did have wonderful conditions, and Chopin himself as a man was demanded many things from his friends, and he needed to have his room where he taught. He had to have the violets and the proper perfumes and the right carriage and the right
everything
gloves.
everything had to be right.
You know, some of those letters are unbelievable. I said, my goodness, the man had nerve as well in bossing around his friends who knew very well he was a genius. Please, I must have this kind of hat. I must have the wallpaper a specific shade of
Everything
gray.
had to be so.
Yeah.
Yes. But, you know, he made similar demands on himself, because when he was writing, one first-hand account says that he could actually go to the piano and write and play a piece that he had in his mind almost exactly as it was going to appear a few months later anyway. But then when he came to actually writing it down, he would question every note, every bar. If you've seen any of the manuscripts, you'll see. I mean, the crossings out. I mean, you can't see what was underneath. He didn't intend that you should.
He makes certain that nobody will ever know.
And apparently went through agonies putting down on paper the very thing he just played through. He was almost like Mozart in that respect. I mean, the
Yeah.
thing was, I think, in his mind the whole time.
It didn't just happen that he found such an affinity for it in Mozart's music. He loved it.
He loved it, of
Yeah.
course.
Now I'm going to try to imagine this waltz, this most special, I think, of the Chopin waltzes in A-flat, Opus 42, which you'll now play from your All Waltz album on London Records. This is called the 2/4 waltz. Can you explain that?
Is it?
Yeah.
I
Well,
didn't
in
know.
English, yeah, it's had this subtitle because
No, I think because the top notes have got...
the rhythm is in
yes,
two.
in two, and then, of course, the left hand's in three.
It makes it hard to play,
Could
though.
be. It makes it very hard to play,
Yeah.
yes. I think it's one of his more, if I can say it, conventionally virtuoso waltzes, but it's enormously effective.
But the
I
touches
love
of genius are just phenomenal. So many themes, and that two beats in the right hand against the three going on in the waltz rhythm is just it's devastatingly
I think
interesting.
it really is one of the most fascinating waltzes of the lot.
We're going to hear your performance of it now, Peter, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Good. Okay, we will now hear the Opus 42 of Frédéric Chopin. What a masterpiece, Peter. The waltz in A-flat Opus 42, Frédéric Chopin, and we will be right back with more discussion with Peter Katin, who has come to WNCN today, and we're going to hear afterward a piece you haven't heard in a long time from one of your recordings, a Scarlatti Sonata. We're going backward in time. Be right back after these messages. I am back. Peter Katin is with me, and we heard Chopin the first part of our program. We're going to hear a Scarlatti Sonata, and he hadn't heard this, and he said to me, well, I don't know if I like it. Let me hear it. And I said, oh, no, I'm sure it's good. And we had a little argument and fisticuffs and so forth. I won that round, so I hope this is good.
I took your word for it.
Peter, we were talking about Chopin and now the fact that you've been playing Beethoven, which is a recent thing in public. What about Scarlatti? No, pianists don't really play Scarlatti much anymore on the piano. What happened?
It's very strange, you know, when I started out, one did. One played a group of Scarlatti sonatas.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about doing it again because there are so many really interesting ones.
Did the harpsichord revolution win out?
Probably it did. I don't know. But I think it can. Some of them will come off on the piano, some of them just don't. But I think it's like Bach. I mean, for instance, I have to confess, I don't like the idea of playing the Italian concerto on the piano. I've never done it.
That's a work that I don't like on the piano.
No, it's muddy.
Yeah.
There's nothing much you can do with it. The slow movement's beautiful. I mean, it'll go on anything. But the outer movements, I just don't think they're designed for any instrument with a tonal setup of the piano anyway. But I think Scarlatti, a lot of Scarlatti, after all, there are over 500 of them.
They're
there
so
must be
pianistic. Something. They're so keyboard-oriented for...
But they don't do it any more than they used to play, you know, pieces by Grieg. Gieseking used to play a group of pieces by Grieg.
The little Grieg is out of fashion now.
Especially after, what was it, the Opus 109, I think I heard him play in one recital, and it was followed by 3 pieces of Grieg.
And it worked well?
It worked beautifully.
Yeah, very interesting. I love to hear programming ideas. Now, I'll ask you this. You were playing in New York, in fact, just yesterday, and you weren't happy with your piano. Tell me the experience of going from place to place and having to confront a new instrument. Is this despairing?
It's not too bad. I think one of the problems is not so much the instrument, but the way it's being handled, being taken care of. And there are too many places in the world still where they can spend an awful lot of money on a Steinway, buying it, and then think it's like a Rolls-Royce, which it is, of course, but and doesn't have to be taken care of. It'll look after itself, and if it goes wrong, they say, why we spent all this money on it?
Yeah, as if that's the beginning of
yes, exactly.
or the ending of it.
And it requires, of course, specialist tuning, specialist voicing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then you're all right. I think largely, I mean, if I'm playing on the same make of piano everywhere, and it's in good condition. I mean, I know that basically they're all going to be the same individually. Steinways in particular differ, but I mean, they have character. They have their own character. I don't mind that.
Yes.
It's very easy to get used to it. It's when you have different makes of piano, different sizes of piano, and that kind of thing, that's what makes it hard.
The different makes.
But more particularly when you get a piano that's not being looked after, that's uneven in tone, uneven in touch. And personally, on the day of a recital, I don't really like to rehearse.
You don't? You don't play before?
10 minutes is about enough.
Do you rest? Do you sleep?
I sleep.
Yes.
I do a dormouse act.
It's an enormous amount of energy that needs to go into playing a recital.
Yes, and I have to go to it in a very clear kind of mind.
Is there still fear after all of these years? Is there a feeling in the stomach of, oh, I wish that this wasn't today?
I very rarely felt that. I've been very lucky. I think the first time I ever played the Prokofiev number 3, yes. I just wish I wasn't doing it, but
Now, why don't you just take that Prokofiev third and forget it, so it doesn't, have to ever bother you again?
Well, it always bothered me. That's the trouble. You see, I stopped playing it for so long, but I mean, maybe now it'll be different. But no, I've rarely felt that sort of fear. I know what you mean. That you had to push yourself on the stage, or somebody has to do it for you.
Let's say you had a Carnegie Hall performance, and you knew that every pianist from the past, from Levine to Liszt to Rachmaninoff to Friedman, would all be there, Schnabel, hearing you. Could that instill fear
All
in
those
you?
ghosts is lovely, lovely feeling.
Oh, that's,
Yes.
that's a wonderful
Atmosphere.
answer. I had heard from Ronald Smith, he had said to me that Liszt had no fears of playing for anyone except Alcan. So I suppose that's where that question arrived from. Now, you never heard Rachmaninoff, of course, play in public?
As a matter of fact, I did.
Oh, you must have been a little boy.
Oh, I was. I was.
Yeah.
Yes, he came to the Queen's Hall and played the second concerto.
Do you remember it?
It was some sort of jubilee. No, I don't really. I
yeah.
can't really pretend I did. Apparently, it was the fastest performance on record. But by on record, I mean within living memory. But I can't remember that.
You were born in London, England, right?
Yes.
And now you're in London, Ontario?
Yes, from one to the other. It's
Now-
quite a contrast.
You are teaching there, is that right?
Yes, I was asked in '78 to join the Faculty of Music at the University of Western Ontario. I
Right.
didn't know how I could do it because it involved an awful lot of
Teaching.
extra travelling and all that kind of thing. But I've always wanted to have something to do with the university. Don't ask me why, but I was right. When I got there, I realised that was really what I wanted to do. Not full time. This is one of the things I really can't do. But within a certain sphere of advanced teaching and the kind of thing I know I can do, I realised that was really the thing I wanted to do, as well as...
You had not taught regularly before? 78?
I had, yes, I taught in London, England for about 3 years. Sheer misery, but after that I taught privately, and I taught very advanced people, usually people who were doing their debuts and things like that.
So you're having a good time in London, Ontario
I love
now.
it, yes.
Wonderful. Well, you're a great addition to that city. Now, we're going to actually hear that Scarlatti Sonata. Oh, but one thing I want to, before I forget it, you said earlier in the program something that intrigued me, and I want to come back to what you said. Born virtuoso. You are not a born virtuoso?
No, I don't think so.
What does that whole thing mean? Is it?
I know, it's a virtuoso. I mean, I think it was Neville Cardus years ago, who
Great critic.
wrote a very long article about the meaning of the word virtuoso, which of course doesn't mean what we mean. I'm talking about easy
Yes.
prestidigitation, I suppose.
Yes.
No, with respect for the people who do it, like my good friend Ashkenazi. I mean, he can learn something terribly quickly. And it doesn't seem to matter how difficult it is, he can do it. I can't do that. I can learn fairly quickly certain things, but I'm not that sort of virtuoso that could actually play all 4 Rachmaninoff concertos in 1 week and prepare them in 1 week and that kind of thing. I believe he and 1 or 2 other people like that can do it.
So there are very few of these.
There are very
actually
few people who
born virtuosi.
I don't know how it happens. I think it must come from very early childhood training. You see, I didn't have that sort of training.
I talked to Ashkenazi recently, and I asked him if he was happy with his hands, and he said that he wasn't. He wished that there was a 1/4 inch more in each. He said, but he didn't want to complain.
I was going to say the opposite, you see, because I have large hands.
Oh,
And when I first learnt the Ravel sonatine, I mean, the hands are in a sort of cat's cradle most of the time, and I had to bend my fingers up.
Everyone
So-
has their problems, I guess.
I think
Yeah.
one sort of gets used to them.
There is no perfect hand.
Even Chopin said that he could never get his 4th finger to do what he wanted it to do.
Chopin said, I have 2 defects. And I said back to him that day, only 2. And he said, yes, my nose and my 4th finger. We're going to hear the D minor Scarlatti Sonata, and get ready because you haven't heard it in a long time, and I certainly want you to be happy with
Now I'm
it.
nervous.
You're nervous, okay. Peter Katin in the D minor Scarlatti Sonata. Scarlatti Sonata in D minor, played by Peter Katin, who I think is delighted with his performance. Am I wrong or right? We didn't say a word.
I was smiling. It's better than I thought.
And you had only one copy in the world left. I mean, you do have that at home. You didn't even know you made this record almost when we first brought it out from the library.
I'd forgotten all about it. It was done quite a long time ago. It was a miscellaneous recording.
How
which
does
they asked
one
me to put
forget
together.
all of the work that is involved in the creation of a record? How did that happen?
Well, there wasn't an awful lot of work involved, you see. I knew all the pieces, and it was a question of my just deciding what I wanted to do, which was very nice.
Now, what was it? Did you one day hear it and you suddenly disliked it, that it left your brain?
No, as a matter of fact, what happened was it was deleted
Yeah.
at some point. It was on a full-price label. It was deleted for quite a long time in England. It's still, as far as I know, is not available in England. And suddenly it came out again on a bargain label. And I didn't
Records
take
are
much notice of
amazing.
it because
You
I
think
thought
they're
I
dead,
remembered.
and then they revive. They come up from nowhere, and
Yes.
sometimes the artist has no idea that his record has been reborn on a budget label or something.
Oh, no idea at all. No, we just don't know. We see them in the shops, you know.
It's so
My
won-
goodness,
it's
how did that
wonderful.
get there?
You're not important in this, you see.
No, I know. No, we just hope we get royalties. You see, that's what we're supposed to think about.
Yeah. Now, I will ask you this question. Rachmaninoff is a composer that you are associated with, of course. You have recorded on Unicorn, I believe, the two-record set of the entire 24 preludes. That is an enormous feat of not only music making but technique.
I think it was, in a way, thanks to having been pressured into learning Rachmaninoff number 3 in the first place. That
Makes
I
everything
actually-
easy, huh?
I could actually do it. But
Yeah.
I found there were so many of them that aren't played still.
That's right.
And I thought it would be lovely. And at that particular time, you know, I think it was the first complete recording in 17 years.
Really, of the entire preludes.
Mura Limpani did them in mono for years and years ago for Decca London.
That's right.
And then there
Very
wasn't
nice.
another one. There were groups of them. I think Richter recorded a group of them. I think almost everybody recorded a group of them. And then Unicorn asked me to do them, and I said I'd love to do them because I was getting far more acquainted with them, and I was playing more of them anyway. Quite a few of them I did have to learn especially, but it was a very rewarding kind of experience, and the recording sessions were enormous fun.
How do you mean fun?
Well, fun in that I had my own way. I mean, I had a
That is
hall to
always
play
fun
in.
when
I
you
mean,
get your own way.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. It is very nice. But if you can actually say, look, I don't want to go into a studio and feel as though I'm in the middle of an operating theatre. And you can actually choose a hall, you can choose the piano, you can even choose your engineer and that kind of thing, and you can work as you like. Then you get things done much quicker and I think better because my feeling is of recording, the nearer to a performance you can get, the better. And under conditions which don't make you jittery, you're more likely to get a performance because one can do, I mean, what I really like to do, and that's to do complete takes of things with a minimum of editing. I don't like this idea of building up things like a film because it isn't really a performance. And under those conditions, I can work much better. I don't get so nervous. I don't worry so much about what's going to go wrong.
So you like these records. This
is one recording
Good.
I'm still very pleased with.
We're going to hear, Peter, the E minor prelude, which is one that is not played often, and it's quite wonderful. I know you like it enormously.
It's fiendishly difficult. I don't know whether that's any of the reason, but it's incredibly dramatic.
Yeah.
It's almost sinister.
It's 4 minutes and 44 seconds, so I hope anyone that's playing this is not going to, time it, but and learn it the way you did. But we're going to hear that. I love the key E minor, by the way.
It was just right.
Wonderful. We're going to hear the Opus 32 number 4 in the hands of Peter Katin, who has recorded all 24 on the Unicorn label. The artist, my guest today, Peter Katin, and we have heard the rarely heard, really, E minor prelude of Rachmaninoff. He certainly wrote works far more popular than that.
Yes, he did.
Sometimes, in a way, he surprises me. He doesn't always give you the big tune, such as we're going to hear in the last piece of the program, your performance of the E-flat prelude. But first, I want to ask you a question. You were not one of the competition babies. You didn't come up through the that route, did you? Which is so rare now.
Well, they didn't really exist.
Uh-huh.
There was Geneva. I think there were one or two others, but there were. Now you see, it's become big business anyway.
What do you mean big business? Tell me what you mean by that statement. It's interesting.
Well, how much tape have you got?
1.5 minutes more.
Then I can't really tell you. But I think this sort of competitive approach is getting into every form of music making. I think it's a pity. I think there ought to be they ought to put the brakes on somewhere, because still the best are only going to get to the top, whether they win prizes or not. I think. Mm-hmm. In the long run, it just takes longer.
Well, I think that eventually I won't be happy until they have, as part of the news, now the news at 11 o'clock, you have at least 15 minutes devoted to the sports of the world. I want certainly equal time for the piano competitions of the world.
I couldn't agree more.
I mean, as long as it's a sport like the way it has become, and as you say, of course, sports are now entirely big business. It's not sport. It's fear.
This is the problem. I think all the young artists can really think about, and that's all he's got time to think about,
Terrible.
Is speed and noise, and this is terrible.
Yeah.
This is awful.
Now, we're in the age, as they say, of science, of space, of great technology. Do you think that we're in an age of art?
I don't think we are at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
There may be another age round the corner. I think that there are signs that we may be returning to something called melody, something called heart, something called feeling.
Uh-huh. Well, I hope they don't call it just neo-romanticism, that it goes beyond a ism.
It's got to go beyond an ism. Somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know when, I don't know how, but I think it's got to happen.
And it's got to happen because you see the world going always in fashion or phases, or do you see that we are on in a route that is not doing us good as a humankind?
It's not doing us good. I think the world is becoming depersonalized. I think this is one of the worst things that can happen. And of course it's affecting art anyway.
And do you think there is an awareness level that will bring it back to the personal?
I think so. It's going to take one heck of a pull to sort of get it back, but I think it will come back. It's got to, because the creative spirit has got to be there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. But of course, scientists and technologists are creative.
They are, yes, in that way. I mean, I'm speaking, purely artistically.
But art is not dead to you.
Art is not dead, but it's looking it in the face.
It's so interesting that Rachmaninoff, who died, I think, in around 43 or 4, in a way is the last melodist that is played continuously. And we'll certainly
probably, yes.
Mm-hmm. That's 40 years almost.
That's what it is.
Well, we're going to hear, as the final piece, Peter Katin has been my guest today, the Prelude in E-flat from his recording of the whole set, 2-record set on Unicorn, and it's 3 minutes long, a little more, and it is all melody, isn't it?
Your timing's right.
Yeah. Here it is, Peter Katin in the Prelude in E-flat major, Opus 23, number 6, Rachmaninoff. Prelude in E-flat, Opus 23, number 6, the composer Rachmaninoff. And the performance, Peter Katin, who has been here this whole hour talking to me, and I thank you, and I wish you the best of luck on your tours and in every way.
Thank you very much.
This is David Dubal, and thank you for listening.
For the Love of Music, with today's host, David Dubal, WNCN Music Director. We hope you'll be with us when once again we meet to listen and exchange ideas, all for the love of music. For the Love of Music is produced by WNCN New York, GAF Broadcasting Company.